Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Addy Otley, and we're here to take a look at the state of education in the Virgin Islands. I'm very honored to have with us tonight, of course, the very Honorable Mr. Myron Walwyn, who is the Education Minister. Minister, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Mr. Otley.
Listen, one of the most important aspects of our society, both here in the islands and in the United States, is the state of education. What is the state of education here in these Virgin Islands?
Look, and I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this evening to be able to talk with the people of the Virgin Islands. We have an education system that has grown substantially over the years. A number of persons have contributed to the development of education in this territory. And the vision that we have for education is that all learners can succeed. And we want to see that all our citizens, from the early age to adulthood, are able to reach their true potential in life and in the society. Our goal, certainly for education, is for education to contribute to the socioeconomic advancement of the territory, by of course making sure that our people can reach their true potential. That has been the case, I believe, over the years, and at different intervals in the education system, improvements were being made having regards to the circumstances around, both locally and globally. And education, of course, must be informed by what is happening in the economy and the business world. I would say the state of education is good because a number of persons, a number of teachers, a number of administrators, chief education officers, a number of ministers have done an exceptional job over the years. But as you would appreciate now, that we are somewhat in a different era, if you will. A lot more is required of students coming out of secondary school, students who are coming out of college. With the new global realities, the economic stresses that are being faced by many countries around the world, there is indeed a new premium on competence. And so we are looking for the very best. If we want to remain on the cutting edge, if we want to be able to enjoy and continue to enjoy the quality of life that we have grown accustomed to. So yes, it has been good, but I think it's now another opportunity, like has been done in the past, for us to take it to a different level, to be in line with the new realities in the 21st century.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm glad you recognize that. And people should, really begin to realize that we're living in a totally different era. The 21st century is totally different than the 19th, the 18th, and the 20th century. So what is the strategy that you and your department are using to move to that goal that you're talking about?
We have been working assiduously from the time the government took office in 2011, because education certainly is one of the key ways in which you can ensure that your economy continues to thrive. There's a very important line in our territorial song that says, educating our people is the golden key to maintain the success of this territory. And one of the reasons why I'm glad that we are in this room that has been dedicated to H. Larity Stout, who is the father of our country, is that he spoke education and he understood that very early. And so we are still enjoying many of the successes, many of the people who are now fighting the battles for us, particularly in financial services, on the international stage. Those persons, Honorable Stout, at that time, saw the potential in those persons, looked down the road, and handpicked some of them to go into tertiary education, to further their education, and now they're paying dividends back to us now. So our strategy, what we call our quality improvement strategy, is geared towards doing just that, securing the future of the Virgin Islands, ensuring that our students, our people, are well trained so that they can, of course, meet their true potentials as individuals, but also protect the quality of life that we have grown accustomed to. To also ensure that education is not looked at in a vacuum, it has to be informed by the needs of the community. And so, for instance, one of the things that we did very early in our administration was to implement financial services and tourism in our schools as subjects. Financial services, as you would know, accounts for 60% of the revenue of the government. And it's important that our students understand it. We're not asking them to know the entire subject area from high school, but at least that they have a familiarity with it. That if they decide to move on to tertiary education, yes, they can take it up. If they decide to go into the world of work, they're not complete novices. They understand the language, and it's just a matter of them being properly trained when they get on the job. Tourism is also the second pillar for us, and it's an industry that more of our people need to be involved in. There are lucrative career options in the tourism industry that I think has bypassed us for some reason or another. And so we believe that if we introduce it very early, we can get our students more involved in it, the boating industry and other opportunities that exist there. We've done a number of things. We've also looked at introduced what we call a National Citizen Service. That is designed to, and it's a mandatory subject in the secondary school, where the students are required to do 120 hours of community service. And we do that because we want them to develop a love for the country, respect for the country, to certainly understand that they have a responsibility to making sure that this country remains great and that a lot is expected from them to do that. We've now embarked upon our new technical school. We want to ensure, again, that our people can fill the jobs that are available in the local economy. The technical school is scheduled to be opened in September of this year, with certification being done academically by the Caribbean Examination Council. And the technical and vocational certification would come from City and Guilds, which is well-renowned and accepted as a high-level institution as it relates to certification for technical and vocational education. There is a need for that here. Most of the persons who are in the technical fields are imported into the country. And if we can train our people at a high level, but even now, the technical education is not the way it was years ago. And you will notice, Mr. Audley, I'm sure in St. Thomas, they have these very fancy cars, the BMWs and the Mercedes-Benz and all those other cars. And if you don't understand the new way the cars are being made, if you're not, the technology that's involved, you won't be able to really do much of it. Even now in the local economy here, a number of persons who come in to fix those cars are from overseas.
Yeah, that's true.
Why can't we train our people to be able to do those things? So these are some of the things that we've been doing in education. That's part of our overall education strategy. We have moved on to something as well that we call key stage testing, where we will be testing at certain intervals the level that our students are at. There are certain set developmental stages in a child's academic life, and we want to be able to test those stages, at those various stages, to see where they are. It is something that I think will bring accountability. It will bring uniformity across our schools, because if the department can test students at various levels, we can be able to deal with problems before they become too big. For instance, the way we're testing now, particularly in primary schools, is at primary 5 examinations. And very often that's too late to identify the problems. And you can't validate a child's primary education simply on one exam. So part of the key stage testing program is to do the evaluations at various stages to see where the child is at. For us to, when they move on to the next stage, for the teacher who will be taking them on to know what the issues are, so that they can be better prepared to deal with the child. And as a result of that, we'll be removing primary 5 exams out of the education system. We intend to have that done. The students who are sitting primary 5 this year we intend to be the last students to be able to set the exam in that way.
Well, that brings me to the point where I've read you're talking about adding an additional year, really, to the educational system, the schooling. And the question, and just reading some of the editorials and some of the comments of the folks, is number one, can you get the resources to do exactly what you have outlined, the strategy that you've outlined? And how do you bring the community really to understanding the importance of exactly what you've been talking about all along? It is critical because of the world that we live in today. It's not the same as it was 15 years ago. And not only the students, but adults too, must become acquainted with the realities of technology and be able to move forward. So how are you inculcating in the community, these very important points?
First of all, the thoughts that are coming from the public, and we had public consultation. It took a number of stages. We met first with the principals in the secondary schools who gave their support to it and also helped to develop our plans. We met with the teachers, and then we met with the public. We had 2 public meetings, one in Tortola and one in Virgin Gorda. I think they went very well because when you're making these sort of decisions, it's important that you have a dialogue with the people, because some very good points can come from the discussions and people can understand what you're trying to achieve. In terms of the resources, certainly we would not embark on something of this magnitude if we didn't look at the needs and what is required for it to happen. Certainly space will become an issue. We need more classrooms. We may need more educators, not that many based on our estimation. So in terms of the resources, I think we have the resources that we need. Yes, there's much talk that perhaps we should look at doing a junior high school, perhaps somewhere down the line in terms of a physical building. Perhaps that may become a reality. But I think with the existing campus, with some reconfiguration at the Almost Out High School in particular, we can achieve the same thing on that campus. As it relates to getting the public to understand what you're doing, it is through constant dialogue, constant discussions. When we met with the public, we laid out what we believe the challenges are. One of the big things that we've noticed, and I've said it before, education must be informed by the needs in the business community. And I think that all of us can agree that the business community, largely, they're very concerned about the quality of students that are coming into the workplace. And it's not just a problem in the Virgin Islands. It's a problem all throughout the world. I'm sure the problem is the same thing in St. Thomas, Mr. Audley. And that tells you something. We have to look at what we're doing. We've heard from the community college, this very community college, that a number of students must do developmental programs before they actually matriculate into the actual degree program. And that is something coming from our local college here. We've had to deal with it as well in the ministry and the Department of Education, where a number of the students, again, the reports coming back from the institutions of higher learning, that the students are not ready. So taxpayers, you end up paying a whole year of tuition just in pre-college courses before you can matriculate into the new class. But I would hasten to say, though, that the concept of an additional year in school is not a new thing at all. As a matter of fact, the idea was around since the 1970s. And there are a number of prominent persons in the Virgin Islands who have benefited from the additional year in school. And many of them have been saying to me that they think it's something that is needed. Ironically, a number of young students, as early as late, I should say, perhaps, as yesterday, I was on this very campus and I had a discussion with a set of students, young students who just came out of high school, and I asked them, what are your thoughts on the additional year? And they looked at me and said to me, we think it's needed. Because we just came out of high school, we are now in the community college, And we've seen that there's a substantial gap somewhere.
Absolutely.
And we want to have more time with the students. We want to ensure that there's mastery of the content. We want to make sure that the curriculum, the syllabus is well taught and not rushed because you have X amount of time in which to put it in. And if you look at other countries around the world, the Philippines, for example, United Kingdom, for example, different states, United States, are doing the very same thing because they recognize that it's a different era that we're living in. A lot more is required now of students coming into the world of work than when you or even me were coming out of school.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And I might add, we get the same kind of report from the University of the Virgin Islands in St. Thomas about the students who are coming out of high school not being able to just move on into college work. They've got to take a year or maybe 2 years of, remedial type math, English, science. And those subjects are they're the core subjects really for moving on into the 21st century, and they need them. And so the time, but your system here in this Virgin Island is that it's like 11 years instead of 12. So adding another year to make 12 years of schooling really is not something new, as you pointed out.
Yes, yes. And I'm glad you spoke about remediation because we have also placed a remedial program in the high school again to help us with the problem because the problem of education is one that you must attack from all angles. And we have noticed that students, even coming from primary school into the secondary school, the time wasn't spent to learn have the mastery of the content. And that's why we decided to move to the key stage testing, so that you don't have teachers actually teaching to pass a primary 5 exam, but that the students actually understand the concepts being taught. And we placed a remedial program in the secondary school from Form 1 to Form 3, from 1 to 3, in the foundational subjects, that students who get a C, anything worse than a C, you must go through the remediation program in that particular subject so that we can bring your skills up. We also recognize as well that certainly early childhood education is also very important to the whole quality improvement strategy. The difficulty that we have, and I shouldn't call it a difficulty, but the early childhood centers are all independently owned. In some parts of the Caribbean, they're run by the government. So the government could go and make swooping changes almost immediately. We now have to work with the independent operators to try to get their centers up to par. Part of the difficulty that you have, not just here in the Virgin Islands, but sometimes it is the persons who are least qualified that we put to work in these early childhood centers. We call them daycare centers, but really 0 to 5 years are the real formative years when you really should be teaching the foundational things to students so that when they go to primary school, there's a foundation upon which they can build. So we are working very closely with the early childhood centers. We've formed an alliance with Hertfordshire County Council in the United Kingdom, and we formed alliances with other places, other learning institutions that will help us to be able to put programs in place to help those early teachers to really get the skill sets and get a curriculum in place so that all the schools are doing what they're supposed to be doing, so that when the students are passed on to primary school, that there's a foundation from the early years.
Right. One of the things, and I think you touched on it, but I want you to go over this again, with the vocational school, technical schools that you call it, you said that's going online next year?
This year,
This
September,
year.
September 2013.
September. Yeah, that's very important because I think last year, and that's why I'm a little bit concerned as to how do you get the message across to folks, in the community. When some of the broad talks that I hear, it's kind of disturbing. Somebody made a calypso about outsiders coming in and jobs are not available. The key is that you don't have the skill set for those particular jobs. And that's, I think, a very important point you've got to make clear, to the community. And that's the reason why. But see, some people see it just from one angle, and they're saying, well, why are we doing that? We have all these people here and blah, blah, blah. And the fact is, the skill sets are very important. So from the educational level, the vocational level, I think it's the approach that you're using is an excellent one, and certainly hope that more and more people will understand what you're doing. And if you have the resources to implement the program that you're talking about, I think then you're well on your way.
Yes, particularly now, where unemployment is becoming an issue around the world. And you look at the Virgin Islands, and you know that there are jobs available. You know that there are things, jobs available for your people to do. But the skills are not there. And so you continue to import labor while your people sit on the sideline because they're not ready. And that is what we are really trying to address, making sure that education is informed by the needs in the business community. We have placed a stigma on technical education and doing technical work for a long time. We have made people believe that those persons who go into those jobs are the persons who are not as academically fast as others. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Truth, right.
And so all part of the strategy is to remove that stigma and to change the minds of people, shape the minds of people to understand that all jobs in the economy are important. And that is what we're trying to do with the technical school.
One of the things that I want to find out from you is, in terms of getting all of this done, the programs with vocational and the additional year and all that sort of stuff, you're teaching staffing, you're the professional people. How are you handling that situation?
That's a good question. We recognize that the quality of education cannot improve unless the quality of instruction in the classroom improves. And so we have done a lot, and will continue to do a lot in terms of professional development for our teachers. We have done, since 2012, a number of professional development sessions for teachers. We have formed a relationship, as I said before, with Hertfordshire County Council in London. We have twinned some of our schools with schools, very successful schools in London as well, and have been doing a program where our principals went to some of these schools to improve their leadership and management skills. And also instructors, persons who are very good in their field in education in London, have been able to come to the Virgin Islands here to conduct professional development seminars with our teachers. As recent as last week, we had two facilitators here. One to deal with competencies in English, early childhood education, and also training for new teachers, because we also have a number of new teachers in the system. And part of that training is also to look at our systems in the Department of Education, to improve our systems so that when new persons come into the system, that we have these various training manuals and other things in place to ensure that the quality of education improves and remains at a particular standard. One of the things that we want to do as well, and we've been looking at it vigorously, is the licensing of our teachers. We want to ensure that our teachers are continuously trained, that they know what the standards are for teaching, and that we look at those who are not meeting the standards and work with them to meet the standards. So this licensing regime, we believe, will be very helpful to us over the years to let students know, to let the teachers know that in order for the students to do well, you must remain on the cutting edge of your craft. So that's basically some of what we've been doing. But we are cognizant that the quality of education wouldn't improve unless we continue to work the professional development on the teachers.
I know you're very passionate, in addressing educational and social needs of the community. But what about the students and the adults in the community that are not as able as a normal child, a normal person, as far as education and the social needs that they have?
Yes, that is a passion of mine. Over the years, I don't think we have done enough to address the needs of that particular class of persons, and we're trying our best to change that. part again of the collaboration that we have with Hertfordshire County Council is to help us as well to look at how we can do more in terms of diagnosing the issues, in terms of the professional development and the professionals that we need in the particular unit within the ministry to address the needs of persons who are differently abled. The remedial program that we placed in the high school in particular, which we will also extend in the primary schools, also geared towards those students that we know have developmental challenges. Last year, for instance, in our primary 5 exams, we did something that I think was different. You cannot test a child who you know have a developmental problem at the same level as a child that does not have one. And so we devised special exams for those students to make sure that we're testing their understanding of the content of the various subjects. So a number of them were able to matriculate on to high school and are also part of the remedial program. I'm having a visit next week from a high school, in the United States that is geared towards high school education for persons who are differently abled. And part of that plan is for us to be able to buy in some of the services that that school offers. And also we are committed to offering 2 scholarships per year to that school, paid for by the government, of course, for persons who are differently abled. Because until we get the service to a level that we're satisfied with, we have to try to partner as much as we can with those persons who have walked the road before, so we can take care of the needs of this special group of persons.
One more question. I know you've been criticized a lot by some of your critics in saying that you're trying to do too much all at once. Are you really, really committed to move in this direction and get it accomplished?
I've heard the criticism. I respect it because we live in a democratic society and persons have the right to air their views. What I would say, though, is that a lot of the things that we're talking about, a lot of them are already in effect since 2012. And what we have done in the ministry is that we form teams within the ministry. So whenever there's a new initiative, a new team is formed to take on that responsibility. We've also used a number of persons in the business community. I don't think that there's any ministry that has more teams or more intervention from persons in the community in the Ministry of Education and Culture. For instance, even on the technical school, we had a committee working for a whole year of persons in the business community who helped us to develop the programs. So whenever something new comes on stream, we summons the help and the assistance of persons outside. Because as I said, we're also providing a product for the business community. So it's important for us to get their input. And a lot of the programs are led by our teachers who also form teams within their schools. For instance, the remedial program that I'm speaking about, that is headed by Miss Thomas, Cherise Thomas in the Elmo Stout High School. And we devised the policy. We said these are the outcomes that we want. And they went and they put the program together, a lovely program, and it's going very well. So I hear what is being said. I respectfully disagree with it. But we're going to keep the dialogue going. And we'll continue to do our best because we're dealing, in my opinion, with the great urgency of now. And you have to attack the issue with education from all angles. And you must, of course, evaluate, revisit, reevaluate to see how things are going. If they're not working, you change them. If something is working well, then you look at the other areas as well. And we continue to do that. So I don't think we're doing too much at one time. I think what we're doing a lot, though, is we're consulting with the public quite a bit.
Maybe that's why.
We have been doing that, and we'll continue to do it. So sometimes when you consult a lot, it looks as if you're doing a lot of things. But, you know, I take the criticism on board, but we'll continue to work for the people and for the students.
Well, that's commendable. And I think the program that you've laid out and you have and you're pursuing certainly is a workable one. and one definitely that is needed. There's no question about that. And if you said you've got the resources, you've got the people who are willing to implement, then, you know, the community support should be there, you know, for this. Because, like it or not, this competitive world in which we live in, unless you measure up to what's happening around the world, you're going to lose. And we can't afford to do that.
We cannot.
Good talking to you, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley. Thank you very much.